Have you ever looked at the people you love most in the world and realized they were counting down the days until you died? If you hate betrayal, you need to hear my story. My name is Rowena Vance, and for the last 3 months, I believed I was losing my mind. I stood in the bathroom of the master suite, staring at my reflection in the antique mirror. The woman looking back at me was gray, frail, and terrified. My hands were shaking so bad that the bottle of blue pills rattled against the marble countertop. "Just take them, Rowena," I whispered to myself. "Lucy says they help with the fog." The fog, that's what we called it. The thick, gray cloud that had descended over my brain. It started small, forgetting where I put my reading glasses, missing a hair appointment. But then it got worse. I would wake up in rooms I didn't remember walking into. I would sign checks and find my signature looked like a stranger's scrawl. I looked down at the pills in my palm. My daughter-in-law, Lucy, prepared them for me every single night. She was so precise, so caring. "Open up, mother," she would say, her voice sweet like syrup, but her eyes cold like the Oregon rain. "Dr. Kalo said these are essential for your cognitive decline." Cognitive decline. A fancy way of saying I was turning into a useless old woman. I raised my hand to my mouth, ready to swallow the medicine that kept me docile, sleeping 18 hours a day. But then a floorboard creaked in the hallway. My stomach tightened. It wasn't the creak of an old house settling. It was the sound of someone sneaking. I lowered my hand. I didn't take the pills. Not yet. I lived in the Hawthorne House, the biggest estate in Silver Creek, Oregon. My late husband and I built this place from the ground up, stone by stone, just like we built our timber business. We were tough people. We survived recessions, fires, and competitors. But now, at 72, I felt like a ghost haunting my own hallways. My son, John, and his wife, Lucy, had moved in 6 months ago to care for me. That's what they told the neighbors. "Rowena is struggling," Lucy would tell the church ladies, putting on a sad face. "We just want to make her comfortable in her final years." I truly believed them. I loved John. He was my only child. He was soft-hearted, maybe a little weak, but he was my boy. I thought he was here to hold my hand. I was wrong. I placed the pills in my pocket and quietly opened the bathroom door. The hallway was empty, but I could hear voices drifting up from the library downstairs. The Hawthorne House had a secret: old, cast-iron radiator pipes that carried sound from the library directly to the vent in the hallway outside my room. My husband used to joke it was how the house listened to us. I crept toward the vent, clutching my shawl around my shoulders. I shouldn't be eavesdropping. It was rude. It was paranoid. But something in my gut, that old instinct that helped me run a business for 40 years, told me to listen. "The timeline is perfect, John." Lucy's voice came through the grate. It was sharp, devoid of the sweetness she used with me. "With the new medication dosage, she's barely lucid. She slept until noon today. She didn't even know what day it was." My breath caught in my throat. I pressed my ear closer to the cold metal. "I don't know, Lucy," John's voice answered. He sounded tired, heavy. "She looked so frail at breakfast. Maybe we should slow down. The doctor said the side effects could be permanent if we keep upping the dose." "Side effects?" Lucy laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Who cares about side effects? The goal isn't to cure her, John. The goal is the power of attorney. Once Dr. Kalo confirms the rapid decline next week, the court will hand her assets over to us. We can list the estate by the 1st of the month." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I grabbed the wall to steady myself. They weren't caring for me. They were erasing me. "I hate lying to her," John said, his voice cracking. "Telling her she's dying, telling her the doctors gave her 6 months. It feels wrong. She's my mother." "It's not lying if it's necessary for our survival," Lucy snapped. The venom in her voice made me shiver. "Do you want to lose the business? Do you want the loan sharks to come back?" "She's old, John. She's had her time. She won't know the difference. We sell the house, put her in the Vista Care facility, and we finally get the liquidity we need." A tear rolled down my cheek, hot and angry. Vista Care. That wasn't a care facility. It was a warehouse for the forgotten elderly, a place that smelled of bleach and despair. That was where they planned to dump me after selling my life's work. And the loan sharks? My son, the boy I raised to be honest and strong, had gambled away his safety, and now he was paying for it with my life. "Fine," John whispered. "Just, let's get it over with." "We will," Lucy said, "On Sunday, the dinner. I've invited the notary. We'll tell her it's just routine paperwork for her medical bills. She's so out of it, she'll sign anything I put in front of her." I backed away from the vent, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wasn't sick. I wasn't dying. I was being poisoned, gaslighting. I had heard the term on the news, but I never thought it would happen to me. They were messing with my medicine, making me confused, making me sleep, just to steal the Hawthorne House. Panic rose in my throat. I wanted to run downstairs, scream at them, throw them out. But I looked at my shaking hands. I was weak. If I confronted them now, Lucy would just call the doctor. She would say I was having a paranoid episode. They would sedate me, lock me in my room, and I would never wake up again. No, I had to be smarter. I had to be the Rowena Vance who built an empire. I went back into my bedroom and locked the door. I took the blue pills out of my pocket. I needed to know what they were. I needed proof. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Lucy was coming to check on me. "Rowena," her voice called out, sickly sweet again. "Are you awake, Mother? It's almost time for dinner." I scrambled. I threw the pills into a tissue and shoved them deep into the pocket of my robe. I splashed water on my face, messed up my hair to look disheveled, and unlocked the door just as the knob turned. Lucy stood there, dressed in a sharp blazer, looking every bit the grieving, dutiful daughter-in-law. "Oh, there you are," she smiled. "Did you take your medicine?" I looked her dead in the eye. I summoned every ounce of acting skill I had. I let my jaw go slack and my eyes drift past her, vacant and confused. I think so," I stammered, making my voice tremble. "Did I? I can't remember, Lucy. Everything is so fuzzy." Lucy's smile widened, triumphant. She walked over and patted my cheek. Her hand felt cold. "That's okay, Mother. I'm sure you took it." "You're doing just fine. Come downstairs. John is waiting." She turned to leave, confident in her trap. She thought she was looking at a helpless old woman. She didn't know she was looking at a tiger who had just woken up. Dinner that night was a masterclass in torture. The dining room was dim, lit only by candles that cast long, flickering shadows on the walls. The rain lashed against the windows, sealing us in. I sat at the head of the table, a position I had held for 40 years, but tonight I felt small. John sat to my right, staring into his mashed potatoes. He wouldn't look at me. He looked pale, sweaty. Guilt was eating him alive, but cowardice was keeping him silent. Lucy sat to my left, pouring red wine into her glass with a steady hand. "Eat up, Mother," Lucy said, cutting her steak with aggressive precision. "You need your strength." I picked up my fork. My hand shook, not because of the drugs, but because of the rage boiling in my blood. I looked at John. I needed to know if there was anything left of my son in there. "John," I said softly. He flinched. "Yeah, Mom?" "Do you remember the summer you were 10? I asked. I kept my voice raspy, weak. "You fell off your bike near the creek. You broke your ankle. You were screaming." John swallowed hard. "I remember." "I carried you," I said. 2 miles, uphill, in the mud. I didn't stop, even though my back felt like it was breaking. "Do you remember what I told you when we got to the doctor?" John finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. You said you'd never let me fall." "That's right," I whispered. "I would never let you fall." For a second, I saw it. I saw the shame crack his face open. He opened his mouth, maybe to confess, maybe to warn me. But Lucy slammed her wineglass down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Stop living in the past, Mother," she snapped. "John remembers, but he's an adult now. He has real problems. We all do." She turned her glare on John, a silent warning. "Shut up, or else." John looked down at his plate. "Sorry, Mom," he mumbled. "Eat your dinner." My heart broke. My son was gone. He had chosen his wife, chosen the money, chosen the betrayal. "I'm not hungry," I said, pushing my plate away. "You have to eat," Lucy said, her voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet tone. "And then you have to sleep. Sunday is a big day. We're having a little celebration for you." "A celebration?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Is it my birthday?" "No," Lucy smirked. "It's a celebration of life. We're getting your affairs in order so you can relax. No more worrying about bills or the house. John and I will handle everything." I looked at the woman who wanted to steal my legacy. I looked at the son who was letting her. "I'm tired," I said. "I want to go to bed." "Go ahead," Lucy said. I'll bring you your nighttime tea and your booster pill. Dr. Kalo said you need a double dose tonight since you seem so agitated. A double dose? They wanted me comatose for Sunday. They wanted me drooling on myself when the notary arrived so I couldn't read the papers I was signing. I slowly climbed the stairs, gripping the banister. Every step was a promise. I will not sign. I will not sleep. I will not die. 10 minutes later, Lucy came into my room with a steaming mug of tea and 2 blue pills. She watched me like a hawk. Here, she said, holding them out. Swallow them. I'll wait. I put the pills in my mouth. They tasted bitter chemically. I took a sip of tea. I made a swallowing motion, jerking my head back slightly. Good girl, Lucy said. It took everything in me not to slap her. She took the mug, turned off the lamp, and walked to the door. Sweet dreams, Rowena. The moment the door clicked shut, I sat up. I spat the pills into my hand. They were dissolving slightly, leaving a blue stain on my palm. I grabbed a tissue and wiped my tongue, desperate to get the poison out. I couldn't flush them. If she'd checked the toilet, she'd know. I couldn't throw them in the trash. I looked around the room. On my bookshelf, amidst the classics, was a thick copy of Sherlock Holmes. It was a hollowed-out book I used to hide emergency cash in when John was a teenager, back when he had sticky fingers. I pulled the book down, opened the cover, and dumped the soggy blue pills inside. Then I went to my desk. I needed to know what I was fighting. I smoothed out the tissue I had kept from earlier, the one with the first pill. I grabbed my magnifying glass, the one I used for needlepoint. I looked at the pill. There were tiny numbers imprinted on it. S-C-O-P. I didn't recognize it, but I knew someone who would. I waited an hour, until the house was completely silent. I tiptoed to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the world wet and glistening. I saw a light on in the garage. Lucy was out there. Why was she in the garage at midnight? I crept to the window that overlooked the driveway. Lucy was standing by the trash cans. She was tearing something up. Papers. She threw the pieces into the bin and wiped her hands on her pants, looking over her shoulder nervously before heading back inside. She was destroying evidence. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I put on my coat over my nightgown. I slipped my feet into my rain boots. I unlocked the back door, wincing as the hinge gave a soft groan. I ran through the wet grass to the garage. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint, but the adrenaline kept me moving. I lifted the lid of the trash can. It smelled of coffee grounds and rot. I dug through the mess until I found the torn pieces of paper. They were wet, sticky. I gathered as many as I could find and shoved them into my pocket. Back in the safety of my room, I locked the door and spread the wet scraps out on my vanity table. It was like a puzzle that would decide if I lived or died. I pieced them together. It was a receipt. But not from a pharmacy. It was a printout from a website. Dark Web RX. Order summary, scopolamine hydrobromide. Dosage, high potency. Warning, overdose may cause permanent amnesia, hallucinations, or death. Customer name, Lucy V. I covered my mouth to stop the scream. Scopolamine. I had read about this. They called it devil's breath. It was a drug criminals used to turn victims into obedient zombies. It stripped away free will. It made you do whatever you were told, and then you forgot everything afterwards. She wasn't treating my dementia, she was creating it. She was erasing my mind so she could hand me a pen on Sunday and say, "Sign the house over to me," and I would do it with a smile. I looked at the date on the receipt. She had been buying this for 3 months. I looked at the mirror again. The woman staring back wasn't frail anymore. She was furious. "Okay, Lucy," I whispered to the empty room. "You want a war? You just started one." The fog was lifting, but the storm was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't felt in months. Silence. Not the silence of an empty house, but the silence inside my own head. The buzzing, static noise that usually clouded my thoughts was gone. I looked at the ceiling fan. I could see the dust on the blades. I could hear the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I sat up and the room didn't spin. I was back. For 24 hours, I hadn't touched the blue pills. The devil's breath was leaving my system, and the Rowena Vance who built a timber empire was waking up from her induced coma. But as I swung my legs out of bed, I caught my reflection in the vanity mirror. My eyes were sharp, alert, too alert. If Lucy saw me like this, standing tall, eyes focusing clearly, she would know immediately. She would force the pills down my throat, or worse. I had to put the mask back on. I heard the heavy footsteps of my daughter-in-law coming down the hall. I quickly messed up my hair. I slumped my shoulders. I sat on the edge of the bed and let my mouth hang open slightly, staring at the wall with a vacant, glassy look. The door opened. "Good morning, Mother," Lucy chirped. She was wearing a new dress, silk, expensive. My money paid for that dress. "Did you sleep well?" I didn't answer immediately. I let 5 seconds pass, counting them in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had a dream, I mumbled, making my voice sound thin and reedy. "About the cat. Where is Whiskers?" Lucy rolled her eyes. We hadn't had a cat in 15 years. "Whiskers is gone, Mother, you know that," she said, her tone dismissive. She walked over and checked the nightstand. The tea mug was empty. She smiled. "Good. You drank your tea. You know, John and I have a very important meeting today. We'll be gone for a few hours. Can you manage not to burn the house down while we're gone?" "Meeting?" I asked, looking down at my hands. "Is John okay?" "John is fine. We're meeting with investors." She lied smoothly. They were going to a luxury lunch. I knew it. I had seen the reservation confirmation on the iPad she carelessly left on the kitchen counter yesterday. "You just stay here. Watch your soaps. Don't answer the door." She patted my head like I was a dog. "See you later, Rowena." I waited until I heard the front door slam. I waited until I heard the engine of John's SUV fade down the long driveway. The moment they were gone, I dropped the act. I stood up straight, popped my back, and marched to the closet. I stripped off the frumpy nightgown Lucy made me wear and pulled out my tailored wool coat and a pair of sturdy boots. I didn't have much time. Maybe 3 hours. I called the only taxi service in Silver Creek. "Pick up at the Vance estate," I ordered, my voice crisp. "And hurry. I have a lot to do." My first stop was 20 miles away in the city. I walked into the office of Dr. Kalo. He had been our family neurologist for 20 years. He was a good man, honest. When I walked into his office, his receptionist looked like she had seen a ghost. "Mrs. Vance, we have you listed as housebound. Lucy called last week and said you were bedridden." "Lucy lies," I said, walking past her. "Is he in?" Dr. Kalo was reviewing charts when I barged in. He dropped his pen. "Rowena?" He stood up, concern etching his face. "What are you doing here? You look—" "I look sane. I look lucid." I pulled the tissue from my pocket, the one containing the blue pill I had saved, and slammed it onto his desk. "Test this, right now." "What is it?" he asked, picking up the pill with tweezers. "It's what my loving daughter-in-law calls memory medicine," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "And while you're at it, draw my blood. I want a full toxicology panel, and I want it notarized." Dr. Kalo didn't argue. He saw the fire in my eyes. He drew the blood himself. He sent the pill to the in-house lab immediately. We sat in silence while we waited. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Every second was a second closer to Lucy and John returning home to an empty house. 20 minutes later, the lab tech came back. She looked pale. She handed Dr. Kalo a clipboard. He read it, and his face went gray. "Rowena," he whispered, taking off his glasses, "you need to go to the police, right now." "Tell me," I demanded. "The pill is 90% scopolamine, mixed with a heavy sedative," he said, his voice trembling. "It's a dissociative drug. In high doses, it renders the subject compliant, suggestible, and wipes short-term memory. Rowena, this isn't medication. This is chemical restraint. They are poisoning you." Hearing it out loud was different than knowing it in my head. It felt like a stone dropping in my stomach. My son. My own son was watching his wife feed me poison every night. "If I go to the police now," I said, my voice hard, "they get arrested. Maybe they get bail. Maybe they fight it in court for 2 years while they drain my bank accounts. No." "Rowena, this is attempted murder," Dr. Kalo argued. "No, doctor," I stood up. "This is war, and I don't want them arrested. I want them destroyed. I need you to write a report stating that as of today, my cognitive functions are in the 99th percentile. Can you do that?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. The drug leaves the system quickly. You're clear." "Good. Fax it to my attorney. And don't tell a soul I was here." I left the clinic and got back into the waiting taxi. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The bank," I said. And then the lawyer. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from an old friend, Frank. Frank was a private investigator I used back in the timber days to vet business partners. I had texted him Lucy's maiden name and her social security number, which I found on a tax form in John's office at 4:00 a.m. "Frank, you're not going to believe this, Ro. I'm looking at her file. Call me." I dialed him immediately. "Tell me, Frank, is it bad?" "It's worse than bad, Rowena. It's criminal." Frank's gravelly voice crackled over the line. "Her name isn't Lucy Miller. It's Lucille Gentry, and she's got a rap sheet in Nevada as long as my arm. Fraud, embezzlement, passing bad checks." "I knew it," I hissed. "She's a con artist." "It gets better," Frank said. "You know how she claims she's a widow? That her first husband died in a car crash?" "Yes. He's not dead, Rowena. He's alive. He lives in Portland. His name is Marcus Gentry, and here's the kicker. There is no record of a divorce. She walked out on him 5 years ago with his life savings, but she never signed the papers." The taxi hit a pothole, but I didn't feel it. I was floating on a cloud of pure, vindictive joy. "She's still married?" I asked. "Legally, yes. Which means her marriage to my son is void." I finished the sentence. "She's a bigamist." "Exactly. She's not legally your daughter-in-law. She's just a stranger living in your house." "Frank," I said, a smile creeping onto my face for the first time in months, "send me everything. Every document. Every photo. Especially the marriage certificate. Consider it done. But Rowena, be careful. A woman like this, if she gets cornered, she's dangerous." "So am I, Frank. So am I." I hung up. The taxi pulled up to the law firm of Blackwood & Associates. My attorney, Mr. Henderson, was waiting. He was an old shark 70 years old and meaner than a rattlesnake. I spent the next hour signing papers. My hand didn't shake once. "Are you sure about this, Rowena?" Mr. Henderson asked, looking over the deed to the Hawthorne House. "Once you sign this, you don't own the estate anymore. You're selling it for $1. "I'm sure," I said. "Sell it to the trust." "The Bryony Protection Trust. My granddaughter gets it all." "And the trustee?" "I've contacted him," Henderson said, a glint of amusement in his eye. "Marcus Gentry, Lucy's first husband. He was very interested in the job offer. He said he's been looking for Lucy for a long time." "Good." I signed the final page with a flourish. "Let him know he can collect the keys on Sunday night." I looked at the clock. It was 2:45 p.m. Lucy and John would be back by 3:15. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my coat. The ride back to the estate was agonizing. The traffic was slow. The rain had started again, turning the roads into slick mirrors. I checked my watch every 30 seconds. 3:05 p.m. We were turning onto the main road. 3:10 p.m. We were at the gates of the estate. "Drop me here," I yelled at the driver. I threw a $100 bill at him and didn't wait for change. I couldn't let them see the taxi in the driveway. I had to run the last quarter mile up the gravel drive. My boots crunched on the stones. My lungs burned. I was 72 years old, sprinting through the rain like a fugitive. I slipped on a patch of wet leaves, catching myself on a tree trunk. My knee throbbed, but I pushed off and kept running. I saw the house looming ahead. It looked dark, empty. Good. I reached the back door. I fumbled for my keys. My hands were wet and slippery. Come on, come on. I got the door open and stumbled into the kitchen. I stripped off my wet coat and boots, shoving them deep into the utility closet behind the vacuum cleaner. I ran to the sink and splashed warm water on my face to hide the rain and the sweat. Then I heard it. The sound of tires on gravel. They were here. I ran to the stairs. My knee gave out halfway up, a sharp bolt of pain shooting up my leg. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. I dragged myself up the remaining steps, gripping the banister. I made it to my room. I dove into bed, pulling the duvet up to my chin. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a jackhammer. I focused on my breathing. Slow down. Slow down. I heard the front door open downstairs. "Mother?" Lucy's voice echoed up the stairs. "We're home." I didn't answer. "She's probably still asleep," John said. "Did you give her the extra dose last night?" "Of course I did," Lucy replied. Her footsteps started up the stairs. Click, clack, click, clack. She was coming to check on me. I closed my eyes. I tried to make my body heavy. I tried to look like a woman who was slowly fading away, not a woman who had just dismantled her enemy's entire life in 3 hours. The door creaked open. I smelled her perfume, expensive, floral, cloying. She walked to the side of the bed. I felt her presence looming over me. "Rowena," she whispered. I didn't move. I kept my breathing shallow. She placed a hand on my forehead. Her skin was cold. "She's out cold," Lucy said, her voice filled with satisfaction. "God, she's pathetic. Look at her. She has no idea that in 48 hours, she'll be in a state-run facility and we'll be drinking champagne in Paris." "Let's just let her sleep," John said from the doorway. "We have to prep for the dinner tomorrow." "You're right," Lucy said. She leaned down close to my ear. "Sleep tight, you old witch. Enjoy the house while you can." She pulled her hand away. I heard them leave the room. The door clicked shut. My eyes snapped open. I stared at the ceiling in the darkening room. Enjoy the house while I can? Oh, I would. Because tomorrow wasn't just Sunday dinner. Tomorrow was Judgment Day, and I had set the table perfectly. Sunday arrived like a funeral procession. The sky was a bruised purple, and the rain refused to let up. Inside the Hawthorne House, the air was so thick with tension, you could choke on it. Lucy had gone all out. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's fine china, the plates I only use for Christmas. There were fresh flowers, expensive wine, and a notary public named Mr. Evans sitting awkwardly in the corner, clutching his briefcase like a shield. I sat at the head of the table, wearing a beige cardigan that made me look washed out. I let my hands tremble on the tablecloth. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I was giving the performance of a lifetime. "More wine, Mr. Evans?" Lucy asked, flashing a bright, predatory smile. "We really appreciate you coming out on a Sunday. We just want to make sure Mother's transition is smooth." "Happy to help," Mr. Evans mumbled. He looked at me with pity. "It's hard when the mind goes." "It is," John said. He poured himself a third glass of scotch. His hand was shaking almost as much as my fake tremor. He couldn't look at me. Every time he glanced my way, he flinched, like he expected me to burst into flames. "Mother," Lucy said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Try the soup. It's pumpkin, your favorite." I stared at the bowl. I picked up my spoon and deliberately let it clatter against the rim. I splashed a little soup on the white tablecloth. "Oops," I whispered, my voice shaky. I made a mess." "That's okay, Rowena," Lucy sighed, exchanging a look with the notary. "See?" That look said, "She's useless. Let's just get the paperwork out of the way before dessert. Then you can go rest." She signaled Mr. Evans. He opened his briefcase and slid a thick stack of papers across the mahogany table. The power of attorney, the medical proxy, the deed transfer. "Just sign by the yellow tabs, Mrs. Vance," Mr. Evans said gently. "It just says that John and Lucy will take care of your bills." Lucy pressed a pen into my hand. Her fingers dug into my skin, a silent threat. I looked at the paper. The letters swam before my eyes, but not because I was sick. Because I was furious. I looked at John. This was his last chance. "John?" I asked, my voice barely a squeak. Is this right?" John looked at the papers. He looked at his wife. He looked at the scotch in his glass. He opened his mouth, and for a second I thought he might save himself. "Just sign it, Mom," he whispered, please." That was it. The last thread of hope snapped. I gripped the pen. I lowered the tip to the paper. Lucy leaned in, her eyes hungry, practically vibrating with greed. She was seconds away from owning everything I'd ever built. I stopped. I set the pen down gently next to the plate. "Actually," I said. My voice wasn't shaky anymore. It was clear. It was strong. It was the voice that had commanded boardrooms for 40 years. "I don't think I will." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the rain hammering against the glass. Lucy blinked. "What?" "Mother, don't be difficult. You're confused." "Am I?" I sat up straight. I rolled my shoulders back and fixed her with a stare that could freeze water. "I don't feel confused, Lucy. In fact, I haven't felt this clear since Tuesday. Since I stopped taking those blue pills you've been feeding me." Lucy's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." I slammed my hand on the table. The silverware jumped. Mr. Evans jumped. I know about the scopolamine. I know about the dark web receipt found in the trash. And I know about Dr. Kalo's toxicology report. I reached into my cardigan and pulled out the folded report Dr. Kalo had faxed over. I tossed it onto the table. It slid right next to the pumpkin soup. "Read it, pray, John," I commanded. John picked up the paper. His hands were shaking violently now. High levels of scopolamine, consistent with poisoning. He looked up at Lucy, horror dawning on his face. "Lucy, you said it was vitamins. You said it was for her memory." "She's lying," Lucy screeched, standing up. "She's senile. She typed that up herself." "Sit down, Lucy," I said calmly. "We're not done. I'm leaving," Mr. Evans said, grabbing his briefcase. "I cannot be a party to this." "Sit down, Mr. Evans," I said. "You're a notary. You witness things. I suggest you witness this." I turned my eyes back to my daughter-in-law. She looked like a cornered rat. "You wanted my money, Lucy. You wanted the house to pay off your gambling debts. I get that. Greed is a powerful thing, but you made a mistake. You thought you could marry my son and take what was mine." I pulled a second envelope from my pocket. "But you see," I continued, "you didn't marry my son." "Not really." "What are you talking about?" John asked, his voice cracking. "I'm talking about Marcus Gentry," I said. Lucy stopped breathing. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. "Who?" John asked. "Her husband," I said. "Her current husband. She never divorced him, John. She ran away with his savings 5 years ago, but she never signed the papers." I threw the Nevada marriage certificate onto the table. "Your marriage is a fraud. It's bigamy. Which means, Lucy, you are not a Vance. You have no claim to this house, no claim to my assets, and no claim to this family." John stared at the certificate. He looked at Lucy. "Is it true? Are you married?" Lucy's face twisted. The mask fell off completely. She wasn't the sweet daughter-in-law anymore. She was a monster. "So what?" She spat, her voice shrill. "So what if I am? John signed the loans. The Sharks don't care about a marriage license. They care about the money. If you don't sell this house, John is dead. Do you hear me? Dead." She grabbed the steak knife from her plate and pointed it at me. Mr. Evans yelped and scrambled backward. "Sign the papers, old woman," she screamed, "or I swear to God." "Put the knife down, Lucy," I said, not flinching. "It's over. The police are already on their way. I called them 10 minutes ago." "I don't care," she yelled. "I need the house. John owns half. We can force the sale." I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. "That's the funniest part," I said softly. "John doesn't own half. John doesn't own anything." "He's your heir," Lucy shouted. "Not anymore," I said. "On Friday, I sold the Hawthorne House." The silence that followed was deafening. You sold it?" John whispered. "For $1, I said. "I sold it to a blind trust. The sole beneficiary is my granddaughter, Bryony. And the trustee managing the estate? The man who has the legal right to evict you?" I looked at the clock on the mantel. "He should be here right about now." A heavy knock echoed from the front door. Boom, boom, boom. "That would be Marcus," I said. "He was very eager to reunite with you, Lucy." Lucy looked at the door. She looked at the knife in her hand. Then she looked at the window. Blue and red lights were flashing against the rain-streaked glass. The sirens were getting louder. Panic took over. She dropped the knife. It clattered onto the china plate. You ruined everything," she screamed. She didn't run for me. She ran for the back door. She scrambled through the kitchen, knocking over a chair, and burst out into the stormy night. "Mom!" John cried, standing up. "She's running." "Let her go," I said, slumping back in my chair. "The police will catch her at the gate." But then my phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up. A text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a little girl in pink pajamas, sleeping in a familiar bedroom. My granddaughter, Bryony. She was supposed to be at a sleepover at her friend's house down the street. The text read, "I picked her up early. If you want to see her again, bring the deed to the Old Mill Bridge. Come alone." My blood turned to ice. She hadn't run away. She had planned this. She knew she might lose, so she took an insurance policy. "She has Bryony," I whispered. John's face went white. "What?" She has your daughter, I screamed, grabbing my keys. She's at the bridge. I didn't wait for the police. I didn't wait for John. I ran. I burst out into the rain. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I jumped into my old truck, the one I used for hauling timber years ago, and roared the engine to life. The mill bridge was 2 miles away. The roads were slick with mud. I drove like a maniac, drifting around corners, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Please let her be safe. Please. I saw Lucy's car parked by the old wooden bridge. The headlights cut through the rain. Lucy was standing by the railing, holding Bryony by the arm. Bryony was crying, clutching her teddy bear. Below them, the river was swollen, raging black water. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out. "Lucy!" I screamed over the roar of the river. "Let her go." Lucy spun around. She looked deranged, her hair plastered to her face. "Give me the papers, Rowena, or I swear—" "It's over, Lucy." I walked forward, hands up. "The house is gone. The money is gone. Even if I signed, it's worthless. You have nothing." "I have her," Lucy yelled, yanking Bryony closer to the edge. "I can trade her." "You're not going to hurt her," I said, stepping closer. I kept my voice steady, even though I was terrified. "You're a thief, Lucy. You're a con artist. But you're not a killer. If you hurt her, there is no deal. There is no prison. There is just me, and I will hunt you down." I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She was a coward. Cowards don't want life sentences. They want easy money. "The police are 2 minutes behind me," I said. "If they find you holding her, it's kidnapping. 20 years, no parole. But if you walk away now, if you run into those woods, maybe you have a head start." Lucy looked at Bryony. She looked at the dark woods on the other side of the bridge. She heard the sirens wailing in the distance, getting louder. Self-preservation won. She shoved Bryony toward me. "Take the brat!" Lucy vaulted over the guardrail and scrambled down the embankment, disappearing into the dark forest. "Grandma!" Bryony screamed. I fell to my knees and caught her. We collapsed onto the wet asphalt, crying, holding each other while the rain washed the fear away. "I've got you," I sobbed into her hair. "Grandma's got you." 2 weeks later, the kitchen of the Hawthorne House smelled like cinnamon and apples. Bryony was sitting at the counter, frosting a cake. She was laughing, getting icing on her nose. I sat across from her, sipping tea. Real tea. No blue pills. The house was quiet. John wasn't here. He was in a facility 2 towns over, a rehab center for gambling addiction. I told him he could come home when he learned how to be a father again, when he learned how to be a man. Lucy was gone. The police caught her 3 days later trying to pawn a fake ring in Idaho. She was awaiting trial. Marcus, her ex-husband, was testifying against her. I looked out the window. The fog had lifted from Silver Creek. The sun was shining on the timberlands my husband and I had bought 50 years ago. They thought I was old. They thought I was weak. They thought they could erase me. But they forgot one thing. You can tear down a house, you can steal money, but you never, ever come between a grandmother and her family. I took a sip of tea and smiled at Bryony. "Grandma?" she asked. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, sweetie," I said. "I'm awake. If you believe that family's worth fighting for and that traitors deserve what they get, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this story and tell the world, never underestimate a grandma."